So today I'm wearing these really cool earrings that my friend Bianca made. They kind of look like green onions, which is the theme of today's video. I'm going to be making amazing flaky scallion pancakes. I'm so impressed with myself. I thought for sure that I was failing in the middle of my little experiment, but ta-da, amazing. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to make them. First things first, we are going to make a hot water dough. We're just going to use 1 cup of all-purpose flour and half a cup of hot water. I explained a little bit of the science behind why we use hot water to make the dough in my dumpling dough video, so check that out if you want to learn a little bit more about that chemistry. But using hot water dough is really important for this recipe because hot water dough is more pliable, and basically that means that it will actually compress when you push it down and it won't pop back up and won't be too fluffy. We're going to be shaping this dough a lot, so it is important that you use warm water and you be very patient with it. So after adding the flour and water, you can just mix it together with your hand and then cover it for 15 minutes or so to let the dough rest and let the gluten develop a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to make our filling. So we're going to make basically an oily paste using some Crisco, or you can use coconut oil or butter. Anything basically that is a solid fat is going to work best for this. We're going to put this in between the layers of the scallion pancake. So if you have a liquid fat, it's going to be just a huge mess. And you can flavor this however you want. The most traditional way is just going to be using some salt as well as some Chinese 5-spice. Chinese 5-spice contains star anise, Chinese cinnamon, Sichuan pepper, cloves, and fennel. So if you don't have Chinese 5-spice, you can use things that are kind of similar to that, but it definitely makes it a really distinct Chinese flavor. So once you've got that all mixed up, you can just set it aside and chop some green onions. Sorry for the shaky camera here, I'm still trying to perfect my video setup, but basically here is where I made my first mistake. I cut too close to the stalk because I wanted to get the most use out of my green onions, but really you just want to use the tops of the green onions, and that'll be pretty clear as I move forward into the process. So just cut around half a cup of the really thin green stalks of the green onion. And then once we have all that ready, you can go back to your dough, which should be resting for a while now. It's still quite sticky, so be really liberal with some dusting of flour onto the surface that you're working with because it's going to get really sticky. Basically, what we want to do is create a really large, thin sheet of dough. So here I'm just kneading it a little bit to make sure that enough flour gets incorporated so it's not just super sticky and hard to work with. And then once it starts feeling okay, I'm starting to roll it out, but you can tell I'm still having quite a bit of trouble with it sticking. So like I said, be really liberal with the flour and be very patient because this might take a while if you're kind of inexperienced like I am. But if there's a will, there's a way, and eventually I do achieve this really nice thin sheet, being really careful with it. And I didn't get it to a really nice rectangular or circular shape, but that's quite all right. Once we roll it up, you won't even be able to tell. And once you have got your nice thin sheet, we can go ahead and start spreading the flavor paste onto the dough, kind of like a pizza. You want to avoid the edges because we're going to be rolling and folding this dough on itself, and if the oil gets in the way, it's going to be really difficult. So just spread your paste in a thin layer. You could probably use a little bit less than I did here, but it ended up being really great anyways. It's just, it didn't need to be so oily. And then go ahead and sprinkle your green onions on top, trying to make sure they're kind of dispersed evenly, and again avoiding the edges because the green onion can also make it a little bit difficult for us to roll everything up. You can see here I've kind of wisened up to the idea that these big chunks are not going to work out, so I started picking them out. I could have done this a little bit more, I think. So now it's time to roll it, and I was thinking about rolling it from this side first, but it's actually a better idea to start from the side that's a little more irregular so that ends up on the inside of the roll rather than outside. So by leaving the more rectangular flat end on the other side to be the outside of this tube, we're going to have a much more consistent tube to work with. And now I'm just going to cut it into 6 approximately equal pieces. You can see the pieces at the end are a little floppy because there's less stuff in there, but that's okay. So now this is a trick that other people don't always show, but I feel like it works much better for me. So I pinch the edges of the dough to close it up completely. Now this is just specific to the flaky, thin style that I like. If you like the more traditional, thick scallion pancake where the scallions are bursting out and it's a really nice spiral and they're kind of thicker, you don't need to pinch them if that's the case, if that's the kind of pancake you're looking for. But if you're looking for something really thin and chewy and flaky with layers, then I recommend doing this because this will prevent the green onions from bursting out of the dough as much. You can see I'm still having some problems with the green onions bursting out because I did leave these sturdy chunks in there, the less flexible ones. So that's why I say for this style, you want to just use the thin tops. So go ahead and pinch the sides of all of your little sections, or you can just do half of them and see if you like the other method better. It might also take a little bit of practice to get this right. I'm squeezing them in a very kind of delicate way to avoid breaking it and also to try to keep everything sealed really tight together. And so once you've done that and pinched it, you can kind of shape it into a flatter disc because eventually we'll be rolling them out with a pin. So these floppy ends had a lot of dough and they were really easy to pinch, and I thought they were going to be kind of bad pancakes, but wait and you'll be surprised. So now I'm rolling them out with my heavy rolling pin, and I could literally hear the green onions crunching under the weight of the pin, and it was making a huge mess. You can see the green onions have burst out and the fat has burst out and everything got super sticky. So for the next one, I tried rolling with a smaller, lighter rolling pin, and this gave me a little bit more control. So I was actually able to prevent as much of a mess. But you can see that it's still not really working out. There's a bunch of holes in the pancakes, a bunch of green onions that are falling out, and a bunch of fat that has gotten to the table. So I tried something new again, and I basically just pressed down the pancake with the heel of my hand, I think that's what it's called, because that allowed me to feel where the green onions were, and I was able to pull out the big chunks that were resisting against the force that I was applying. So this is a good lesson in adapting and trying different things if what you were trying wasn't working. And give everything a fair shot too. So this piece of dough is actually one of the end pieces that didn't have as much green onion or flavor paste inside of it and had a high ratio of dough. And it ended up being super easy to roll out. You can see I went back to using my wooden rolling pin here. And in the end, I ended up with 6 pretty decent looking scallion pancakes, even though I at different stages had judged each one wrongly. So don't judge your pancakes before you eat them. And we're getting a little closer now because it's time to fry them up. And it's time for some science. So this is the ideal gas law, which is basically a law that takes into account the rules that are on Earth and demonstrates a relationship between gas and the space that it takes up in relation to temperature. So here I'm drawing a demonstration of a very thick piece of green onion in the dough, and the water molecules are in the dough, that as they get cooked because of the flame that's under them that's increasing the temperature, we're going to see movement of the water molecules, which is going to create a gas pocket. So when we have a nice solid layer of dough, the bubble can get bigger in size. But when you have a hole that was created by the green onion, the water molecules are going to escape when they turn into gas. And this is going to happen when we have this increase in temperature, which is going to increase pressure. And if volume can increase, it will. But if it can't, the pressure will be relieved by the gas escaping. So how am I going to solve this problem? I guess I'll just replace the chunky green onions with nice thin flexible ones so that when the water molecules move and turn into a gas, they can make a big bubble in the dough. So the ideal gas law basically explains why I made the dough the way I did. From pinching the ends of the dough to wanting to use the thinner green onions, I'm basically just trying to make the dough one whole unit that doesn't have any holes in it for the water molecules to escape the bubbles. And you can see that some of the dough does have really nice bubbling, specifically the pancakes that were from the ends of the tube that didn't have as much of green onions or flavor paste. So next time I'll ease up on the green onion and I'll continue doing this pinching technique because these pancakes turned out so good. They were definitely the best ones I had ever made. But before we dig in, we're gonna make some sauce. So gonna splash in some black vinegar into the pile of green onions that didn't make it into the pancakes, as well as some soy sauce. And we are going to also add some chili oil or sesame oil. Here I have chili sesame oil, so that works, as well as some sesame seeds. So this is basically just the version of the dumpling sauce that I made a video of. You want to just mix anything that's salty, savory, vinegary, basically any of the flavors you like. So here I'm just adding an extra little forkful of chili paste because that'll give it an extra little kick that is going to make my sauce extra delicious. All right, it is time to dig in. These are so crispy and flaky. When I tear it, you can see all the different layers in there created by the bubbles from the gas that was forming. And I like to just tear off a little piece and dip it into the sauce and enjoy it just like that. But these can be kind of greasy, so another great way to enjoy them is using them as a wrap. So you can fill these with veggies and tofu and other things to have it be more substantial of a meal. And this provides a really nice outer shell, basically, for other foods. You can also have them as an appetizer or even just a little snack. Typically, people will serve them in little slices, so you can just cut them with scissors into quarters, sixths, eighths, whatever you like. You could even freeze the pancakes before you fry them, so you have some ready in the fridge or freezer whenever you're ready to make them next. And what else you can do with these little scallion ends is to actually put them in a planter with soil and grow them, or even just a glass of water, and you'll have some offshoots of green onions very soon. So science is all about learning from our results and then iterating so that we can do better next time. So this was the best ever batch of scallion pancakes that I've ever made according to my own tastes, but next time will be even better. The last time I made scallion pancakes, I actually followed a different recipe where I had to roll out 6 long rectangles and then roll them individually into tubes and then twist them into spirals from there. And I actually didn't have a rolling pin, so I used a beer can, which didn't give me enough pressure to flatten them all the way, but this is a lot more like that traditional kind of thicker, denser scallion pancake that I had mentioned. You definitely see the more prominent spirals in those ones, but I don't like them as much as the flaky, thin ones that I had just made. But if you want to see more, you can follow me on Instagram. I tend to show more of my sciencey experiments on there. So next time, I'm only going to use these more flexible parts of the green onion up top, probably like right around where they start to split into the different shoots. I hope to refine this recipe and eventually show you in a little bit of time a really nice, big, fluffy pancake that is even maybe reminiscent of a pita bread. You know how they have that huge giant pocket in the middle? So stay tuned. I'm always trying to improve. So if you have any tips, please also let me know in the comments, or you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is noodle.phd. Don't have my PhD yet, but hopefully soon. And in the meantime, keep making, keep creating art and food, and I will see you next time. So thank you so much.